Today we shall be examining the 1937 film Parnell, starring screen icon Clark Gable and that woman on the poster.
The film is an adaptation of L.C.T. Schaeffer's play of the same name. It dramatizes the real-life love affair between Irish political leader Charles Stewart Parnell and the divorcee Catherine O'Shea, more commonly remembered as Kitty O'Shea, the name Parnell's enemies gave her, as Kitty was a contemporary slang term for a prostitute. The film is renowned for being a huge box office flop, even though it was released at the height of Gable's film career, and it so soured him on doing period pieces that it very nearly led him to not do Gone with the Wind. It was ranked amongst the 50 worst films of all time by Messrs. Medved and Dreyfus, and also Leonard Maltin just gave it 1.5 stars, meaning it's a whole star worse than Laser Blast. But I can only assume that's because Clark Gable can't hold a candle to Eddie Deason.
So, why don't we see if this film holds up to their criticisms? And while we're at it, let me illuminate you on the lives and loves of one Charles Stewart Parnell.
Dubbed the uncrowned King of Ireland, Protestant landowner Charles Stewart Parnell was a key figure in the Irish struggle to regain Home Rule, which they had lost as the result of the 1800 Act of Union.
But most importantly, he likes to play with toy trains, and he had a mighty beard, something which Clark Gable refused to wear for the film.
We open in America, the birthplace of Parnell's mother, and he's getting a huge parade send-off from all of the Irish Americans telling him to go home and get them some home rule, just so they can go home and be priests and policemen there instead. He tells them it was very silly to take that Irish soil with them to America, because Ireland is always in your heart. So with his mission received from the Irish Americans, Parnell heads home to get him some home rule.
God save Ireland!
This is actually based on a trip Parnell made to North America to raise funds for the Land League and famine relief. But here the sole purpose is for Parnell to be told to go home and get some home rule.
Parnell arrives home in Queenstown, modern-day Cove in County Cork, the constituency he would represent from 1880 until his death.
Oh, look at the happy old man! He's so happy! Oh, he's so happy! Sorry, I don't know what came over me there.
Amongst the adoring crowds are members of Parnell's own Irish party, who tell us for the first of many, many times, just how awesome Parnell is.
2 minutes we'll be shaking hands with him again.
I doubt if any man's return has ever been so waited for or needed.
It's a dangerous thing when one man is as important as all that.
Not when that man's Parnell.
But in fact he's too popular, and the RIC decide to arrest him.
Dangerous if I may say so, sir.
We better make the arrest on the road.
Here we are introduced to Catherine's husband, William O'Shea, and his running mate for the County Clare seat, the O'Gorman man. Yes, apparently his first name is The. Over-the-top villainy. Look!
When I meet him, I don't want to be in competition with a crowd of unwashed hooligans.
It's such a shame that's as close to true camp villainy as he ever gets.
And now a scene where grown men gaze lovingly at Parnell and ask him to save the world.
Evictions, outrages, house burnings. It all began again the minute you left.
You're the only one who can do anything, with the English or the Irish.
In a nod to the Land League, which Parnell was involved in, he stops when he sees some soon-to-be evicted tenants, and goes to try and sort their problems out.
Is it the rent?
Then the RIC men from earlier come and arrest Parnell.
Mr. Parnell?
Yes.
I'm sorry, sir, but I have a warrant for your arrest.
What's that? We can't arrest him.
I'm terribly sorry I have to do this.
Well, that's all right. What's it for this time?
Seditious utterances.
Well, I've made several utterances that might be called seditious. Where are you taking me?
Kilmainham jail, if it's all the same to you, sir.
All right. I'll go with you in just a minute.
You stay behind and see that these people are sent up to my place, Avondale.
Yes, sir.
Put them on the train and telegraph my steward to have a cottage ready for them.
Parnell is taking these people to his own estate? They can't afford to pay rent where they are. How can you guarantee they're going to be able to pay you rent? I mean, This is noble, but it doesn't actually make much sense.
Parnell actually spent time on Kilmainham in 1882 because he criticised the 1881 Land Act and denounced Prime Minister Gladstone as a masquerading knight-errant. Not that the film makes any reference to this. From his jail he encouraged Irish farmers not to pay their rents, and there was an outbreak of violence, or what Parnell called Captain Moonlight.
And you know, there's part of me that wishes Captain Moonlight was Parnell's superhero alter ego.
He meets Captain William O'Shea for the first time in the film, and William O'Shea in real life had been the go-between in negotiations between Parnell and Gladstone while Parnell was jailed. The film's O'Shea wishes Parnell all the best.
Well, may I wish you a speedy release?
That's not what your wife said. The real O'Shea was a Dublin-born captain in the army, but in the film he's an English toff. I guess you've got to make a guy whose wife cheated on him for 10 years unbearable somehow.
We cut to London where Catherine's receiving words of wisdom from her Aunt Ben.
Don't look so glum.
At her husband's request, she heads to the Commons to see Parnell. Somehow now out of jail, he gets himself suspended from Parliament in what I think is a reference to the obstructionist policy of the 1870s, where Parnell and others would engage in filibustering in order to be heard in Parliament.
This is intolerable. I must request that the House...
I move that Mr. Gladstone be no longer heard. Holy murder! He's telling the old spider to shut up.
Mr. Speaker, sir, it is my painful duty to move that the honourable member for Cork be suspended from service in this House for the remainder of this sitting.
His party suspended, Parnell returns to his office to find Catherine O'Shea is waiting for him. What follows is the scene you expect after seeing the poster for this film.
Mr. Parnell.
I've kept you waiting. I apologize.
It was extremely kind of you to see me at all, Mr. Parnell.
You're Mrs. O'Shea.
Yes. I was in the ladies' gallery just now when you spoke.
Then you saw the fireworks.
The melodrama is stripping off the screen.
Oh my, they're holding hands. That's practically sex on the first date for a Victorian couple.
Oh, in real life the affair had already started at this point. And they conceived a child together. Just saying.
As per her husband's plan, Catherine invites Parnell to dinner, and this causes one maid to get kind of creepy.
And Mr. Parnell will sit there.
Here, ma'am, in this chair.
Yes.
The saints be with us. I'll be in the same room with him this night. Tomorrow I can die.
Just so it isn't tonight, Ellen.
That's just weird. It's like he's the Justin Bieber of 1880s politics. Yeah, this seems really boring. I mean, it would have been nice to see some of the real life things like Parnell and Catherine losing a child or having 2 more children. Or what about Catherine and William's children? One of their children, George, threatened to give Parnell a kicking. I mean, couldn't we see any of this? Anything interesting? No? Really? Okay. Fine.
Instead, we get scenes of Aunt Ben being a bitch to Kate's sister Clara.
What voice have you, soprano or contralto?
No.
Well, it's a sort of mezzo, really, though I did once take high C.
That was a day. Pity Providence chose gout instead of deafness to afflict me with.
While at dinner, Parnell receives an early edition of the next day's newspapers, which are accusing him of murder. The murders in question are the 1882 Phoenix Park murders, when the Chief Secretary, Lord Cavendish, the second in command of Ireland under British rule, and his secretary were murdered in the Phoenix Park, Dublin, by a group called the Invincibles.
6 years later, the Times would produce letters which linked Parnell to the murders. The film, rather than dwelling on the fact that the main character has been accused of murder, gives us a scene straight out of a rom-com.
Parnell and Catherine get lost in foggy London, eating baked potatoes, because nothing is more romantic than the baked potato. And then their love is blessed by the Potato Man.
But when you're courting, I suppose it's you and me together, love, and never mind the weather, love.
The fog and smell of baked potato overwhelms them, and they kiss.
Oh, my darling.
This is madness.
No.
But Kate's finding this all kind of awkward because, well, she's married and he's been accused of murder.
But luckily, a Cockney cabbie and Archibald the Wonder Horse are here to save the day.
Hi, cabby. Hi, cabby.
Well, Archibald,
Are you a cab?
I ain't quite sure, lady, but I think I am.
Oh, Archibald and the Cockney cabby. I wish this film was about you and not about St. Parnell and Mrs. Unhappily Married.
Come on, Archibald, come on.
What follows is a massive crowd scene where a crazy man is trying to get 500 people to set 500 fires in London because somehow that will achieve home rule.
The time has come to throw aside this policy of argument and waiting. And what are we going to do now? I'll tell you what they're going to do. On a windy night, 500 fires lighted by 500 loyal Irishmen in the city of London. And English tyranny will be broken.
Parnell, riding by a cart pulled by a white horse, tells the crazy man his crazy plan is stupid. So the crowd, who are all forward beforehand, suddenly turn on him. And just as they're about to mob him, Parnell saves the day.
What this scene teaches is that Irish people in the 19th century would listen to whoever was talking loudest.
Back at his lodgings, Parnell is taken ill while trying to take his shoes off. The film then makes reference to the heart problem that would eventually kill Parnell in real life. He follows this by doing his best Undertaker impression.
What is it? There's nothing in it. Just a confounded heart of mine.
His secretary telegrams Kate, who rushes to his side and takes him home with her under doctor's orders. Then Parnell holds a cat, but he doesn't quite seem aware that he's holding the cat until it's pointed out.
I see you have Erasmus to keep you company.
Erasmus? Oh, yes.
I might be reading too much into this, but the cat's name is Erasmus. Erasmus was author of In Praise of Folly. Perhaps praising the folly that was the relationship between Parnell and Catherine. Do you see what I did there?
4 months later, and Parnell is still living with Catherine. Captain O'Shea returns to the film to remind the audience of the murder plot. Also, he turns up to refuse Catherine's request for a divorce. After all, he needs her money, and it's Victorian England, so women can't file for divorce. We cut to court, and Sir Charles Russell, famous barrister, has a bad cold.
I want to speak to him. I must speak to him. Please let me go in. It's terribly urgent.
I'm sorry, lady. I have my orders. The court's full.
Can't you ask him to come out for just a moment? It's a matter of life and death.
Well, I'll see what I can do. Who was it you said you wanted?
Mr. Parnell,
Katie, where did you get this?
I found it among your unopened letters.
She shows up with a letter that proves Parnell's innocence, written by Richard Pigott, the man currently on the stand. The convenience. It hurts.
And the best thing about Pigott? He has the most whimsical dialogue in the film.
Your name is Richard Pigott?
That's right.
Your age?
Oh, I've seen 54 summers come and go.
You mean you are 54?
That's what I mean, my lord.
Why can't you say so?
I beg your lordship's pardon. I'm 54.
Your occupation?
I'm a scribe.
I beg your pardon?
A scribe, a scribbler, a pusher of the pen, in modern slang, an ink slinger, an inhabitant of Grub Street.
The real Richard Pigott was a journalist who had fallen on some hard times. He also looked like Santa Claus cosplaying as the Monopoly Man. The film actually illustrates how he was caught out. He was asked to spell the word hesitancy, which had been misspelt in the forged letters, and he failed to do so correctly. However, Catherine O'Shea's role in the entire affair is complete dramatic license, and it really makes my head hurt. But at least Pigott's reaction when he's found out is priceless.
Oh, that's awesome.
Pigott goes outside and he immediately suffers a severe case of suicide, reflecting the real Pigott's suicide 2 months after the trial in March 1899 in a hotel room in Spain.
You might possibly like a word with your witness while he's outside. You might like to give him the benefit of your advice, your legal experience.
The vindicated Parnell returns to the House of Commons and receives a standing ovation, which actually happened in real life.
3 cheers for Mr. Parnell! Hip, hip! God save Ireland, save the heroes! God save Ireland, save we
second. I know that song. This is quickly followed by Parnell telling the party that Gladstone has agreed to a Home Rule bill. This didn't happen. At least not when the film says anyway.
In all their celebrating, they forget that a bill isn't a law. A bill doesn't become a law until it's passed by both houses of Parliament. But never mind that, because it's time for an old man to give a speech.
Wait a while, till we hear from Mr. O'Brien.
Right.
Take it easy,
sir.
Mr. Parnell, sir. Charlie, as the oldest member of the Irish party, one whose father fought with Robert Emmet, and who himself, as a mere gossoon, was with O'Connell, and served a term in prison, aye, and even been sentenced to death in the service of Ireland. All my life I've dreamed and waited for this day.
This character exists to be a symbol of Irish struggles. But like everybody else, he's really overreacting. They've won nothing. A bill isn't a law.
And of course it's now that Captain O'Shea chooses to file for divorce. And it's a good thing that Catherine and Parnell were home at the time. Otherwise they would have gotten the news from one of London's many newsboys of dramatic convenience.
What are those newsboys shouting?
Captain O'Shea names Charles Stewart Parnell in famous divorce case.
Just as in real life, the divorce scandal tears the party apart. Parnell tries to convince them he can still be their leader, but to no avail. This leads Parnell to break from his usual stoic self and go dish out some home rule justice of his own.
I give you my word I'll get it for you if you'll let me.
And if you don't meet another Kitty O'Shea.
And the party walks out on him, even kindly old Mr. O'Brien.
The old man. He's so sad. 1 second. I'm back.
Parnell collapses and is taken back to Catherine's house. There he makes a speech to the remainder of the Irish party about not turning their next leader into a god.
Find a new leader if you must. Only when you do, deal with your leader as a man. Expect of him a man's behavior, not that of a god.
Although coming from a film that spends much of its time treating Parnell like a divine presence, this comes off more like, I am Parnell thy god, you shan't take other gods before me.
And soon after that, Parnell dies in Catherine's arms.
Katie.
Yes, dear.
Katie,
What are you trying to say, dear?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
This film isn't very good. It gets large brushstrokes of history correct, but Gable's Parnell is just too saintly, handsome, and beardless to be believable. The Irish party's split is presented merely as a result of his affair, when in reality, the affair was the straw which broke the camel's back for a party whose hardliners were losing faith with Parnell and his moderate politics. William O'Shea always maintained ignorance of the affair until he filed for divorce in 1889, although I think he was well aware of the affair and only filed for divorce after Aunt Ben died, also in 1889, and he received nothing from her will. As for Parnell and Catherine, they seemed very much in love. They had children together, and they married after the divorce was settled, but Parnell died 6 months later in 1891.
It's just a boring love story. It gets some things wrong, it gets some facts right, it compresses a timeline, and ultimately it suffers from being more in love with Parnell than Kitty O'Shea was. Although I do think it was missing one key ingredient. More of that Victorian superhero, Captain Moonlight. Captain Moonlight, away!